How would you define racism?
Unnecessary, or there's no logical reason behind it, but for some reason somebody of some certain race has something against somebody of another race.
I would define racism as the idea and the philosophy that people use to believe that they're more supreme than other people, and specifically the racism comes from white people believing that they are more superior than other people, a subdivision of races. Humans are all one species, but racism makes it believe that white people are somehow superior, and that's what is in people's minds.
I would say you're taught from childbirth, you're taught not to like somebody because of their skin color. And that's also, it's based on stereotypes too, I feel. Because you look on the news and you'll see that, oh, well, the African American community is rioting or this, that, and the other, and you get scared now. So that when you see them, whatever you see on TV, you're gonna take that into perspective. So now when you see a black guy walking down the street, you're like, oh, well, you feel a little bit scared. Are you being racist? I don't know, but...
To me, racism is when one group of race treat other group of racial group differently, and mostly in unfair way, discriminating way, and at times in violence.
I think that would be an individual being intolerant, non-educated of other people. It can start from so many different places, from home, from school, just really lack of education. But it really is the misunderstanding and unknowledge of other people, other races, other cultures, knowing where they came from, their struggles. And it works in all directions.
How do I define racism? I would say that it's the common disliking of race, gender, sexual relations, or anything at that matter.
I would say that it's any kind of discrimination or harassment of people based on skin color or even ethnicity, I would say.
I'm a deep thinker. That's a hard answer to give. It's not so much if somebody likes you or not like you, but I think it's what you see from the inside out that has a very bad impression of you for no other reason but hatred.
Oh, good one. People with no tolerance for anybody else that doesn't meet their same ethnic background.
Racism, I believe, is it to be, well, segregating, not very original word, a separation. Certain people are exceptional to rules, and some it seems rules are harder on other in earthlings, So that's the way I see it. Or fear, media-induced paranoia, things like that.
People of a certain race not liking another race for no particular reason.
Racism. How would I define racism? Well, I believe racism is, all around us each and every day. And racism could be to the form of someone not liking your ethnicity, or even someone just hating on you, like have a really dislike for your style. It could be anything these days.
I would say is a disparity of actions towards someone that may be different.
Ignorance. Best way I can describe it. people not understanding other people. We're all created equally. We weren't born racist. We've allowed ourselves, people who are racist, to be that way.
Racism is an ideological construct for this capitalist colonialist social system that is based on, these days, white people having some sense of superiority or some idea that they are superior to people who are not white.
Blinders that people are wearing relative to other people. Negative connotation and not recognizing the innate value of all humans.
Say believing that your group, because I don't see race as a complicated thing, believing that your group is superior than other.
Belief that's probably pretty strongly held in the superiority of one's ethnicity or color over that of others.
They just making apart the rest of the people that they don't see like the same as them, and not only in colors, also in culture or religion as well.
The critical awareness of race when one...
The systematic oppression of certain people, people of certain ethnic backgrounds.
Keeping the two races separate. It's a difficult concept for me to define, but it has to do with creating an other from oneself.
Racism. The selection or rejection or preference of a certain person or group according to their race.
The treatment of one ethnic group to another ethnic group. Racism is the acting out of iniquity of superiority, treating another race as their inferior. Racism is hatred and racism is ignorance.
Ignorance, really, because I've always just thought that there's just one people, but you have bad people and good people. It doesn't matter what color you are on both sides of the spectrum.
How has racism impacted your life personally?
I honestly can't say that I've had anyone be racist against me, and I've never actually been racist against anyone else, but I have seen it, and sometimes it does make me more cautious about going into certain areas of town in large crowds. I try to avoid them.
Well, as a white person, I grew up in a generally racist white society, and early on, as a child, became aware of the history of slavery, and this compelled me to look deeper into the history of this country and learn that this country and this social system were built on the oppression of black people, and racism was created to justify that system and that oppression. So everything in my life has been affected in some way by that reality.
Personally, it really hasn't, but I think that's because I'm of the white Caucasian race, so I haven't had to deal with it as much as probably other people.
To this colonial state, this colonized state. So it's not racism so much that I think is my problem, because racism is just what somebody thinks about you in their head. That doesn't cause me a problem. What causes me a problem is black people's ability, state-sanctioned ability to make what they think in their heads have some real material implications in my life.
None. I see myself as a straight white male. I don't see any kind of discrimination against me. I feel privileged.
To tell you the truth, I really haven't had to come across any racism other than my sexuality, and that will be probably most of it through my family for the most part, but and that's just a couple people in my family, but that's the biggest racism that I've ever had to deal with.
I wouldn't say that it has. Personally, I've seen it around me, but I've never felt like someone was directing racist comments or racist beliefs on me.
It's made me think about the way other people treat other people, and it makes me look at the world in different ways depending on how people interact with their opinions towards other people because of racism.
Ooh. I have a gay son. I have several friends who would be considered sexually ambiguous by modern society, and I feel like that racism is rampant.
Not terribly, not directly, I would say. Thank goodness. But, you know, I'm not a minority in any significant way, so I haven't personally experienced prejudice that I'm aware of.
Well, being of a darker complexion, I think it impacts my life daily, but it varies from different parts of the world. When I was in Africa, I didn't feel any at all, period. But I know it exists. When I was in Turkey, I felt like it was, as far as my race was lifted up, it was actually something that was revered. Then only in America have I felt negative towards my race.
I've overcome it by not ignoring it, but to do better than that person, or to do better than that group, or to do better than that society.
Well, I grew up, my high school was 80% black, and as you could see, I'm white. So, needless to say, I was fighting every day, and it was never one-on-one, it was always four-on-one, and they would always steal my wallet or take my book bag. And I had multiple stitches all the time. I couldn't get transferred to another school, so I quit because, you know, I didn't like getting beat up. I guess it started then and just blossomed.
Actually, that's a really good question. I was actually in foster care, so going house to house, I of course got to live with people of different ethnicities and different backgrounds. So I lived in I lived in a a Caucasian family, and going out with them, being a family member, was always a struggle because you're always being that person that was looked at or stared at because you're not the one that, you know, belongs in that specific group. And you know, I dealt with some racist things within that house, like, you know, being shot with airsoft guns and stuff like that.
Well, being from Memphis, I've seen it, but Memphis isn't as black and white as people make it out to be. But my high school actually had a racial riot on, of all days, Valentine's Day of my junior year, so I think that was '95. Shut the school down. We were on USA Today on the front page. The KKK had a rally on our front, literally on our front lawn, hung dead black ducks on nooses in the black student parking lot. but there really wasn't a black student parking lot. It was, of course that's what the media said, but there was no such thing as a white-black student parking lot. So I think that impacted me on an early age, and you can think about 1995, are you kidding me? It's not 1950 or 60, and then 2015 we still see it, but I guess that's how it's impacted me.
I would say it's not in a major way, but I had experiences in the past that people who heard that I'm Israeli took it or judged me accordingly with their decision or their approach towards me. But other than that, it was really a minor incident. It was here and there, nothing really major.
I grew up in a very unusual situation, and I feel this has benefited me greatly. I grew up outside of DeLand, Florida, which is a small, rural, bigoted town for much of its early history, both racially and religious bigotry. But I lived out on a farm, and we lived in the woods, and on one side of our farm were Snuffy Smith type people. They were 92, a woman 92, her nephew was 76, and they lived a very Beverly Hillbillies life. He carried around a rifle. It was amazing. Because of them, I learned at an early age to appreciate older people and what they brought to my life. My brothers and I would go in to their property, go to their outhouse. I felt so lucky as an adult that I had these people who were different from me and my family, but who were wise and taught me things without me knowing I was being taught. On the other side, in the woods, again, we're in the woods, we are on one-lane clay roads, if that, was an elderly black couple. Elderly, probably 50s. To me, they were elderly. And my brothers and I were hiking in the woods one day. We're probably about 10 years old. And we see this house in the woods. And we go into the house. And this lovely black woman says to us, "Children, can I help you?" And we're like, whoa! And from then on, their grandchildren would come and stay with them, and we would go and play with them. Now, this is in the 50s and the early 60s. This was not prototypical, especially in Florida. And my parents were so amazing that they wanted us kids to have experiences with people of all different sorts. And we were raised Catholic. We were in a little Catholic school in town, and there was some bias against Catholics in our town. But my parents managed to, just by the way they interacted and by the way they had us interact with others, we learned valuable lessons without even knowing we were learning lessons on how to deal with a complex world. And I am so grateful for that. Because as an adult, I feel, because of the way I was raised, I feel like it was not odd to go to a school where there was diversity in the student population. And if anything, I learned that this is awesome. You know, the more people are so much more interesting when they're not clones of you. And I thank my family every day that they gave me those tools.
I grew up in the 60s and 70s. Our country had many race riots. In Newark, New Jersey, there were severe race riots, and in Red Bank, New Jersey, there were race riots at the same time that some of my best friends were African Americans. We didn't understand it as the kids. It was an older generation, but it caused conflict and drew lines that weren't actually there before. Those lines have been erased by now.
Well, lots of examples. Back in the 60s, when the riots broke out, we had curfews, we had to be home early, we had busing when I was in school, there was all kinds of stuff when I was growing up. Me as an individual, you know, I got along with everybody. My best friend in the 2nd grade was black, her name was Phoebe. So, but yeah, I was exposed to it at an early age because of the race riots in Rochester, and busing was a big issue when I went to school. So I was very aware of it.
What recent event of violence due to racism has impacted you the most?
The most recent example that a lot of us saw was Walter Scott, who was shot down, and that happened to be videotaped. He was shot in the back while he was running away from a cop in South Carolina. And that one impacted me because even my mother, who we don't usually discuss issues like this, was disturbed by that and, you know, contacted me to express her dismay and her outrage over that. But I mean, it happens every single day, and it's really remarkable and unspeakable to live in a country where Africans, black people are being murdered every single day, shot, killed for no reason by the police every single day in this country. It's only through being part of a movement to end that I can even go from one day to the next.
I mean, the murders, the constant police murders that happen almost on a daily basis are, you know, most significantly impacting me because, you know, people, they take place, such as the murder of Freddie Gray in Baltimore, and they take place and people are dismissive. The community, especially the white community, is dismissive of these deaths because they believe, oh, they deserved it, or, you know, that community, that the black people have it coming for them or something. So there's some type of deep-seated racism in the responding to these acts of violence. And I feel like each time another black person gets gunned down, that is extremely impacting.
Again, you know, it's an interesting question. You know, I don't see it as a racism kind of thing. I think the fundamental, the central issue is colonialism, and so you know, I'm affected by equally affected by every instance of violence perpetrated by the colonizer against the colonized. So, you know, this is September 14, 2015. This year, there's been a rash of murderous activities of the state, the colonizers, exposed via you know, these camera phones that they have now. You know, like Freddie Gray, Eric Garner. I think Tamir Rice was caught on video. I mean, just on and on and on. So it's a lot of video stuff of the awful things that the colonizers do to colonized African people. I can't say that one affects me more than the other. They're all equally detestable in my view.
Obviously, I mean, with the media propaganda and whatnot, I think, you know, obviously the Baltimore, what's going on over there is pretty serious, and it's definitely impacted me in a way that I feel. Also, I feel like it's more of the ignorance that has been displayed on social media and whatnot about people. You know, only it seems to be really focusing on the negative elements that are going on in Baltimore. They're not showing really peaceful protesting. Instead, they're emphasizing the looters. They're trying to intertwine both. They're saying, oh, all the protesters are looters. And it's like, no, that's not the case at all. Peaceful protesters are literally protesting and have been. That's not as acknowledged. And then the looters are the ones, you know, that are supposedly them. It's like, no, the looters are just ignorant people that just are taking advantage of what's going on. Unfortunately, a lot of my Caucasian friends, embarrassingly enough, I noticed, and even different ethnicities are definitely going around posting things on Facebook and saying, oh, well, look, they're all right here. And look at people that got shot. They have, a criminal record, and it's like, how is that even relevant to someone's death or murder? So I have some opposing views.
I guess because it was, I don't watch TV much, so I don't know. I don't read the newspaper, and I don't, read other people's information unless it's in books, nonfiction and stuff like that. So I can't really say anything too much but I would say Trayvon Martin situation just because I live in Florida. And living in Florida, my sister called me immediately from New Jersey and said, all right, you need to be careful. You're a very tall, intimidating African-American male. Anyone could just shoot you and say you intimidated them. So I would say probably on the impact of my life and how I have to watch my tone, if you will. I would say that.
I think his name was Eric Gardner, the one in New York. The man that was put in a chokehold, even though it's illegal in the state of New York and it has been for decades, and the cops still did it and still got away with it.
What effect do you believe education has in race relations?
I think education has a significant impact in race relations. I think from day one, when we go in elementary school, when we start learning about Christopher Columbus and we start thinking about how this system came about, it's very misleading to think that it was just somehow a magical gift that that this America, that the nation came about. And I think it's important for education to tell the truth and real history of what happened, and that implies that America, the way that the history unfolded, and the forefathers of America were somehow special white men, when in fact they were slave owners themselves. And because we don't talk about that history, it's very problematic how people grow up thinking about white and black people and the relationship that we have to each other, because it was the white slave masters that owned Africans. And since we continue to deny that history and keep burying it, it becomes more and more problematic.
It plays a big role. Back again, saying I'm from Memphis, you can see the county schools are predominantly white, the city schools are predominantly black, and you can see the funding. You can sit there, you can walk up to this school and walk up to this school, and you can just see that, you can look at the funding, you can see the difference. The dilapidation, I can't talk, dilapidation of the buildings, the lack of school books, overcrowding of the classrooms, the list goes on. So I think there is a disparity in funding in public education, absolutely.
It promotes racism as an ideological construct. Generally speaking, I'm in college right now. Matter of fact, I'm taking this class called something like Racism in America, and this white woman has me reading this book written by a white man. It's going to tell me about racism and how I should understand it, how it should be viewed. And she actually has lectures and quizzes and stuff that I'm supposed to respond to in some kind of way. But all of her lectures, all of the academic material that she uses to facilitate the class, all of it is set in a framework of this is a racist society. It doesn't say anything about how racism came to be a reality, why racism is perpetuated, what the function of racism is.
I think it has a huge effect. I think the fact that we don't teach history in terms of other perspectives really encourages racism. So I think changing that right there would change a lot of the ways that we view racism and a lot of the ways that we try to change it or make some kind of impact on it?
Okay, now that's a good one, because I do find that people of different colors, races, it's easier for them to get scholarships than those that are Caucasian and white. It's easier for them to get grants. You know, and there's actually scholarships set for certain races or ethnicities, however you say it, that aren't for, you know, Caucasian people. So I find that a little bit unfair. I think everybody should have a chance no matter what color they are, especially people. I think it honestly should go by, you know, what type of money you have. If you can't afford school, then somebody should help you afford school.
I don't think it's controversial to say that it's probably extremely important. Racism is something that, you know, we kind of tend to learn from the previous generation, I think. So education is very important in combating that.
Especially today, we have classes, at least in the psychology major, where it's women's studies or it's studies about gender, and we are starting to have those discussions in public universities. So you do get educated on things like that. You get educated on public policies and on different cultures. And I think that really helps open up people's minds.
Completely. I think public schools, for example, I think a lot of it's institutional racism. I think it stems from there.
Well, Black History Month, for one. Okay, they need to eliminate Black History Month. There's no White History Month. There's no Spanish History Month. There's none of that. There needs to be like the World History Month. And really, they're not teaching everything. Once you get older, everything you learn in high school or school in general, you learn that some of that shit is a lie. And they just, I apologize for my language, but you know, they lie to you so much about things, you know, and
I think it depends on what kind of education you're getting. But I know in my liberal arts degree, I'm studying anthropology, studying sociology and psychology. That was when my mind started to open up. I didn't even understand racism before I came to college. I thought that it was something that had existed in the past and didn't really exist that much today. And it's not until you're sitting down and reading all the facts and statistics and historical accounts that just, you know, even that aren't historical because they're happening now, that you finally understand exactly what's going on in our country.
Major. Yeah, it's extremely major because education is becoming the downfall of our society, I believe. Either you choose to know or you don't choose to know, but often too many times in the education system, from what I've seen down here working in the education system, it's they don't even get a chance. There's no chance at all. Whenever you just pass someone and give them a certificate and say, you know, well, you kind of have grasped certain ideas as opposed to life understanding of what will make you successful, you're setting everyone up for failure.
I feel like some people are misrepresented, like because of the stigma and the racism, some people don't get the same treatment as others, and that's not fair.
I think it has an important impact. If any, this is true for anyone. If anyone who can receive an education, starting with making sure you graduate from high school, and then going on to higher education, I think there are better chances that that person will be able to rise above whatever background they came from, and be able to participate more fully in American life. However, that said, I know for a fact that, for example, an African-American family making $100,000 a year is likely to still live in a neighborhood where the average income is about $30,000 a year for the family. And so there are institutional and racism that are very difficult to overcome. There's expectations within a black community, for example, that one is part of some types of violent activities, or one is part of gangs, and that's very difficult to overcome. As one of my former students said to me, who was a young African American kid, he said it's really hard to concentrate on your math homework if you're worried about bullets coming through the kitchen window, and it's really hard to deal with the pressure from those who are not seeking an education. This country has a history of incarceration of black men, particularly, and that continued cycle of African American incarceration has doomed, in many cases, the black family. If you go to jail for violent or nonviolent crime, you come out with a record, which means that your job opportunities are going to be limited, and your family is going to be touched by what happens with you, and it creates a cycle where incarceration becomes almost more of a norm than an exception. We incarcerate more African Americans in this country than any place on earth. I think the numbers are something like 7 to 1 in terms of African American to white people incarcerated. Well, again, it creates a cycle that is difficult to break, and it touches everyone in the family.
Where do you see us 2 decades from now?
I'm not sure. I either see us continuing to change, like the change that I've seen in my lifetime with what's termed race relations, which is actually human relations. I've seen a lot of positive change. I would like to say that I see that continuing till that there's harmony in our society, but at the same time, with the tension that I see with the social economic problems in certain communities, the lack of education or opportunities for certain communities to evolve in our country, that it could end up in a serious fracture in our society.
My hope is to be better as a group of people, as we become more diverse in the society that we're in. But I think that we will continue to have this issue of race, but hoping that it would be better. There will be conflicts, a continuous conflict, because you can't educate everyone. But if we have a large society that are educated and knowledgeable and approach things the right way with compassion, I think the large number of percentage of the community will help those that do not know, or those that are still prejudiced, to overcome that. We come a long way already. I mean, I've been here for 30 years, so I've seen the differences just by looking at my community, where I was once categorized as, Vietnamese, because at that time it was a Vietnam War. So every Asian was Vietnamese coming from Southeast Asia. So now it's totally different. The Vietnamese community are very well accepted. They become very active in their community as well as the melting pot of the American culture. So there's that understanding there, and I'm very hopeful for that. But to truly end the issue, no. But hopefully it will lessen it.
That's a good question. I think, unfortunately, we're not going to be in a very good place. That's all I'm going to say.
Good question. I don't know. That's my honest answer. I can tell you where I hope to see us though. Like I really don't know. Ferguson what happened in Ferguson after Mike Brown was shot and killed by that white guy, Darryl Wilson or Darren Wilson, whatever his name is, in Ferguson, Missouri. The way the people that had to live under colonial conditions for so long, under the oppression of police occupation, of merchants extracting from them their resources, people who had to live under those colonial conditions for so long. When Mike Brown was shot and killed and his body was left to lay in the street for hours, I don't know, something like 3 or 4 hours, African people responded in a kind of way that we have not seen, with fierce resistance. When I say in the kind of way I'm saying, they responded with fierce resistance, the kind of resistance and the kind of rebellion that we have not seen, at least in a sustained capacity, since the 1960s, the Black Revolutionary movement of the 60s. And so since then, the African liberation movement has been kind of turbo boosted forward. And there's a lot of hope, and not hope based on anything that is like metaphysical or spiritual or something like that, but like real world material stuff gives me hope that we can change the world in the next 2 decades, if not sooner. Because after Ferguson, we saw that kind of resistance happen in Baltimore and in some other places too. But I believe that in the next 2 decades, that the workers, the African working class and poor peasants and our allies will be close to seizing power if we have not seized power and begin to govern ourselves all together. So, and again, I can't predict the future, so that's an incredible question. But I would say that there are things that's happening right now in the world that you see imperialism in crisis. What's happening in Greece, the instability of the economic situation, the fact that the G8 is now the G double digit something. I don't know. Last time I saw it was like G20, G24 something. I don't know. But now it's like double digits is reflective of this crisis of imperialism. So imperialism is in crisis. And African people are becoming more and more aware, more and more active, and that makes me believe that in the next couple of decades we won't see an entirely different world. So.
I see us as still a country struggling because it will always be a struggle. It's a melting pot, and until we can all understand each other. And there's so many people to understand. It's not just 2 races, there's a million races. So, and then we're all intertwined at the end of the day. If people want to look back to it, I could probably trace myself to you and you can trace this person, so it's just, can we educate ourselves? Can we educate ourselves to be more tolerant towards other people, understanding of where they come from, and embrace one another? Because at the end of the day, we're all here in the same country, We're fighting each other. And I always joke, I always tell people, if we got rid of social media, if they unplugged the internet, if we didn't have stuff to look at every single day to influence us even more, then I think we'd be much better off. Just text message and call people.
2 decades from now. Well, I see America being more of a melting pot, as in the percentage of the races will probably become diluted and more people are going to be belonging to the mixed race rather than belonging to any category as black, white, or Asian.
Unfortunately, in a very bad place if we continue to allow our generations that we're raising to see the media and people the way that we're labeling them or defining them. We should teach our children we're all created equal and that we all have the same opportunities. Girls can do the same thing boys can do. Black, white, Spanish, it should not matter. We should not label somebody and tell them basically you can do this because of who you are or what you are. I teach my children that it doesn't matter who, what color, where you've come from, you can be and accomplish anything you want to do. My 5-year-old daughter tells me, well, Mommy, can I do this because I'm a girl? You absolutely can do it. And you could probably do it better than some boys. And some boys will do this better than you. It's called the natural balance. But I feel that people have created this unnecessary label machine on people that in 20 years from now, it scares me for my children, for my grandchildren, because God only knows. Look at us now. Look at the hatred, look at the violence now against, black, white, Spanish. It's disgusting. It honestly makes me very scared. I pray over my own children every night that they don't have to experience what I see coming. If it doesn't change now, if somebody doesn't step up and make the difference, I don't even know.
Hopefully we'll be coexisting more and there'll be no fighting and talking even about racism. Hopefully we wouldn't even have to talk about it. That's where hopefully I hope it will be, but you never know.
2 decades, it's going to be a multicultural world for sure. I can see it happening now. Like Obama got elected and there was all those death threats with Obama, but now Obama's still around. I see people mixing it up all the time. You see Asian guys, Spanish chicks, everything, and I love it. I love the fact that people are looking at each other, not based on the skin color, but for everything around it. What are your ambitions, things like that. That's what matters. You need to stop talking about race. So once you stop talking about race, then you just end it. That's what Morgan Freeman said. Stop talking about it.
Oh, I hope not where we are now. I hope that people could just be people, not defined by their color, not defined by their physical, their hair color, eye color, whether they have money or not, black, white, orange, purple. I don't really think any of that is what matters. I think all of that should be, hopefully, be gone in 20 years.
In 2 minutes or less, is there anything else you would like to say?
There's no real reason for racism, and if you feel racist, I understand that maybe something in your life has compelled you to feel that way, but I feel like you need to take it upon yourself to have an open mind enough to understand where other people are coming from, different ethnicities, different religions, all of that kind of stuff. Something you need to definitely take a step back and look at. And I hope that will help you, because it's pretty ridiculous, to be honest.
I think that those of us in the white community have a particular responsibility and an interest in standing in solidarity with African people and all oppressed peoples. And if we really want to be a part of a new world coming into being where people can relate to each other in a principled and humane way, not in a way that is based on oppression and slavery and rape and domination, then we have to see our future in the liberation of black people and all oppressed people on this planet, because that's where our liberation is, that's where our freedom is, and our future is bound up in their liberation.
I would like to say that I think more than ever I've seen people trying to grapple with the question of racism and what is happening in society, and I think that is extremely positive sign. Even if people don't know the answers, the fact that they're raising these questions and they haven't ever before, that means that the significant turn of events are coming about.
Not really. I just excuse me. I just feel like you should teach your children, that at the end of the day, race is race. I feel like we all can work together. We all can be united. There's no reason to look at people, I feel like, and have negative thoughts. Even if you've had, a negative experience with someone of a certain ethnicity or race, whatnot, I feel like you shouldn't generalize that to the entire population. And I feel like you just educate yourself as best as you can, do research for yourself to learn about your heritages and other people's as well, and explore that. because there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever.
I believe that love is the cure. I believe that understanding ourselves is a cure. And if there's anyone that has the insecurities to bring about racism towards another group, I would like for them to just look within themselves and look in the mirror and see if they can smile at themselves.
I would say I'm very hopeful. I'm very hopeful for the future because I'm an example of that. I think that personally I've come a long way, so I think hope is always encouraging for the future.
Not that much. No, I mean, I just wish that everyone would wake up. And I wish people would open their hearts and their minds and really take a look at what's going on and put yourself in the shoes of other people. Because that's the only way to truly empathize and understand and make a difference.
That one always has to be aware of the old saying, and I don't know who said it first, about walking a mile in another person's shoes. Might be a good idea for all of us to try that as a personal rule. Anyway, that is all I can say at this point.
I think we're at kind of a turning point at a cusp with all of the what are considered by the general public as racially intensive, motivated interactions between police and anyone who doesn't fit that societal mold of just what we call privileged. I think it happens particularly among the gay community, and I think it's very important that we have more education and more knowledge about the fact that if we don't get a hand on this and these race relations, we're all going to blow up. We have one planet to live on, and we all need to learn how to live on it together.
One thing I guess I will say is I really don't think that the Black Lives Matter movement is actually the best movement to be going off of, mainly because we're still separating a specific race. Whenever it first came out, I was like, you know what? Yeah, Black lives do matter. But it's not just Black lives that matter. It's our Caucasian lives, our Native American lives. And honestly, like, Native Americans are ones that are actually often overlooked. Our Indians are often overlooked. Those are the kind of people that we really need to, like, zone in on. Like, it's not really, like, when I see underrepresented population now, I'm thinking about, you know, the Hispanic people who can't really actually speak English. So of course we're not like trying to figure out what they need. We're talking about the people who are coming from Cuba or, you know, just all over, you know, the world and coming, you know, specifically to America to, you know, gain that freedom, but they're not giving the proper opportunities or the proper channels. I was actually just speaking to somebody the other day about teaching English as a second language. Like, I feel like, you know, it's something that I do want to be able to, like, look at and be able to see. And I was telling them about, hey, McDonald's is actually going into a different area where they're like, you know what, we're going to teach our employees how to speak English, not just like how to, like, make sure they're ringing up our orders correctly, but how they can have a day-to-day conversation with somebody else, or how they can read and stuff like that. Because when we were doing surveys, I think 2 years ago, they were finding out that most of our people were doing surveys in Spanish more than English. And it's because they can't read English. They can't really speak English fluently. They can just do enough to get the job done. And that's why people of those kind of caliber get stuck in that position. We can't see them becoming our president, our governor, or our state representative, our teachers, or anything like that, because they're stuck in a position because of a language barrier. So I think by everybody jumping on board and saying, how can we help offer an opportunity like that? I look at, like, businesses like Duke Energy or Even like banks, they're looking for those people who like either they're bilingual, but they of course they have to speak English, but they're not training people. Instead of like hiring them on and saying, you know, we can develop you into a person that can be better for tomorrow. And that's where I see businesses like McDonald's. And McDonald's isn't the only one. I think Chick-fil-A is starting to do it now. We're seeing businesses reaching out saying, hey, you don't need to be stuck in a position like this. This is a job for people just getting started, not a job for your career. Which is the reason why, you know, you see people like talking about minimum wage and how they don't like, you know, what they're getting paid is because they're stuck in a position like that.
Love everybody. Love one another. Don't hate. Appreciate.
How would you define racism?
Racism is something that I think is inborn with, no, I wouldn't say inborn, I think it's something that parents teach the kids to respect one race over another race because of the color of their skin or because of their religious orientation. It's just because you're different, or color of your skin, because who you marry. They seem to think that there's something wrong with it. It's so many directions I can go with that. That'll take me a long time to go into.
How has racism impacted your life personally?
I'm 58 years old. I've heard about a man called Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, sir.
And I think I was about 11 years old at the time. And they said the man had a dream that black people, white people, all races and creeds would come together. And because of that, I've been told all my life that we all have equal rights in the country. And just about 3 years ago, I worked for a company called ABM Security. As a security guard, my job is to observe and report. That's my job. They ordered me to pick up trash in the parking lot for a year and a half of that time.
Excuse me? Yeah, just got a call about you. I guess the get-up's a little intimidating. You're on USF property.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna have to check you out. Can I see some ID, please?
Let me see, sir. Just one moment.
Thank you.
I think I can. It'll take a little while.
No, it's fine. Take your time.
My thing. Right now I'm homeless, but I can give you an address, and if you like.
Fine. Just you got a picture ID by any chance?
Yes, I have a picture ID of my old address.
That's fine.
What recent event of violence due to racism has impacted you the most?
Down at USF campus over in Tampa. A friend of mine who got friends over in Tampa at USF invited me to come over because he knew the people there. And over at USF over in Tampa, they have a free speech zone. And I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. The only difference is that my face was covered. And they said it was against the law for me to have my face covered, but I learned that after the fact, after I was arrested. The woman, the police came up behind me out of the blue and handcuffed me. He didn't tell me why he was handcuffing me, didn't give me any kind of warning, snatched the mask off of my face like I was nobody. And that's one, but it's a many, but that's the last one that comes to my mind. Why? Why? He could just simply say, sir, it's against the law to have a mask over your face. Sarah, you know, I won't bother nobody. And they arrest me and trespass me from the campus. I won't bother anybody. They just put the handcuffs on me, come to me out of the blue from behind my back, snatch the mask off my face, and arrest me and trespass me. And now I got a court date September 18 over in Tampa for wearing a mask. And I see people wear masks all the time. If you go to the sporting events, people have masks all the time. And even if it was against the law, at least he could have said, well, it's against the law. Let me tell you, I protest in front of the 49th Street Courthouse. J. Thomas McGrady is the chief presiding judge of this district. I stood out there for about 2 weeks with this mask on, maybe a week, I'm gonna say a week and a half, with this mask on and my head cover. They didn't say anything about it. I'm in front of the judicial system doing this thing, just showing them the kind of people that I'm dealing with. And that's why I have this, the KKK. K represents ABM Security, a firm that I work for, that ordered me to pick up trash as a security guard. G4S represents the second K, who joined them to discredit me with my case that I had with EEOC. And then they pulled in Walmart Corporation to call my chief witness out late at night, pretending to give the man an interview. And they got him out there to kill him. But by chance, the man was driving his brother SUV. He said, I recognize the kill trap. You see, Mr. Thompson, my chief witness, is a former Green Beret officer, a man that served his country, a man that risked his life. And he said, I recognize the kill trap because he said, I've taught officers, police officers around this county how to set up them, kill traps. But he said, that night when they called him for an interview, claimed to give him a job, he said that my car was broke down that night. And thank be to God that my brother SUV was there. I drove my brother SUV. And he said, I wore some glasses that I don't normally wear. And I seen the kill trap. 2 executive officers that work for G4S, the general manager, and his second in command, sitting there with their guns in their hand while he rode through it with the assistance of St. Petersburg Police Department. It is so much I can say, but anyway, he made it through the kill trap. He went to Walmart that night. Walmart was surprised to see him. They gave the man the job on the spot, pretending they gave him the papers to do his drug test. And he thought everything was all right. Now I got a job. He did his drug test. His drug test come back good. He waited 2 weeks. He asked, why you not calling me out for my job? You hired me to work a third shift position at night to fill coolers, meats and things. So now they didn't call him. So we connect the dots and said that's what happened. They were trying to kill the man.
Mr. McDowell, can I interrupt you just for a second?
Yes, sir.
You said something about the campus and being arrested or handcuffed. What's that about?
Okay, I was out, a friend of mine's invited me to come out to USL. He's not a student there.
Are you talking about in Tampa?
In Tampa.
Okay, I just want to clarify that. You're not talking about USF?
No, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
What effect do you believe education has in race relations?
Misinformation. I think today we're not educated, we're just indoctrinated. It's like a cow chewing cud. You're saying the same thing over and over again that seems different. We're not teaching kids really what real life is about. They give you all these elective courses that you'll never use in your life. This academe, and it's overrated. It's overrated, but it shouldn't be. I mean, education is a great thing. Helping someone to touch within themselves, something within themselves that gives them to know things and realize things. Education inducere from within. And once that connection is made from within, then education from professors and whatnot stops because it takes on. Educators is to touch something within you, touch something in you that you already know. And once they bring that out, it begins to educate you. It begins to educate, doing what you know, and you realize things as though, you unfold like a flower from within. And educators that come from within themselves is able to bring it out of you. But if they're just teaching just teaching what everybody else taught, you're not going to make it in this life.
A lot of people have asked me why I chose to talk about racism for my honors thesis. And I think with a lot of the things that have happened in the last few years in the media, with Ferguson, with Baltimore, with Lennon Lee Lacey in North Carolina, it really pressed upon my heart to see what America had to say outside of the media, outside of the government or the officials giving statements. I wanted to see what America actually thought about where we were at in regards to racism. I have a very beautiful team that helped me put together this process. I would like to thank Andra Baranda and Philip Belcastro for helping me on this project. Andra had a beautiful vision of taking each of the 5 questions that we set up and making a short, which we will be releasing before the full documentary. I'm really excited about this project because I really went into it thinking that I knew what I was going to find and knowing what people were going to say on certain of the answers, and honestly I was very surprised in many ways. The 5 questions that we asked was, how would you define racism? How has racism impacted your life personally? What recent event of violence due to racism has impacted you the most? What effect do you believe education has in race relations? And where do you see us 2 decades from now? We were able, even though it was technically a convenient sample, to have a very varied sample, and the demographics are all over the place in many ways. On the consent form, we had some information that we requested from each of the participants regarding demographics. We were looking for things such as age, highest education level completed, annual income, ethnicity, spiritual background, and for fun I even threw in what is your favorite color. I was very happy to see that even though the technical sample would be considered a convenient sample, it is very, very randomized in the fact that I have some people that have 0 income all the way up to $100,000 a year annual income. I have people who dropped out of high school to people with master's degrees. I have people from so many different ethnic backgrounds, and it was very exciting to see that the demographics were very, very random. It really, to me, has added a lot to the research to be able to see that we have so many different types of people on film, different ages and different education levels, able to talk about what they think about racism in America in 2015. I'm also turning in an empirical study, a written thesis that would follow the general template for an empirical study. And it's been really exciting, a lot of the things that I have found. I'm looking at racism from a lot of different angles. I'm looking at it from biological perspectives, from classism, and the perspectives that that would offer, and not just the color of skin. It's very important to me to include all cultures and try to realize that, you know, America is this great melting pot, but we're still having problems getting along. And what I would really love to see is us all be able to take the best from each culture and harmonize and learn from one another. And that was really the goal of my research. This is just my honors thesis, so I know for graduate work and my dissertation that this is my life's calling. There's a lot to be done in this subject and in this arena, and I think that, you know, we're really moving into a very global community, and we have a lot of people from all over the world now able to connect with one another, whereas even, you know, 15, 20 years ago that wasn't possible. And I'm only 37, so I can't imagine what it's going to be like when I'm 67. I really am excited to see where we progress. The last question I think surprised me the most. I asked people, where do you see us 2 decades from now? And a lot of people were very optimistic. They were very hopeful. They said they felt that racism had all but disappeared. But a lot of people really felt like it was coming to a head, like we're about to see either a race war or some kind of statement of, you know, we've had enough of being treated unequally in America, whether it's the Latino community, the Black community, or any other, you know, community that's trying to meld into the American population. I just am really excited to see the conclusion of this work and to wrap everything up, and I hope you enjoy the documentary.